Hey guys, welcome to our first Wellness Warriors book club. I'm super excited. We're going through 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Tonight we're going to talk through the first three laws. So, law of the lid, law of influence, and the law of the process. Um, these are really good. I'm going to keep it brief because I want to hear what you guys have to say too. So I'm just going to kind of do a brief overview of each law, and then we can kind of talk about what stuck out to you. So the law of the lid, we have to increase our leadership ability in order to be effective in leading others. So essentially, if our leadership lid is at a 6, we will only ever lead people up to a 5, essentially. And so if we want to be more effective in our leadership, then we have to grow in that. And it talked in the chapter about like our dedication and how like you can be a pretty dedicated person. But even if you like increase your dedication, but you don't increase your leadership ability, it's really not going to gain you that much. So it's really important to continue to work on that leadership and work through that leadership ability. And the our change that we can have in ourselves will have that lasting ripple effect. Then the law of influence is leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And John Maxwell says that multiple times throughout this chapter. And he just tells us that if we want to be a leader, we have to have influence. And maybe it's something that we don't have right now or that you feel like you struggle with. But he gives some different ways and some different things that you can look at in there. And like influence isn't necessarily positional. Just because you like someone is the president of a company doesn't mean that they actually have influence and that they're an actual leader. It's more of a positional leadership. I loved his example of Mother Teresa, how she wasn't this like lady that was out there, but people respected her and she could say whatever she wanted to, essentially, and she offended pretty much everyone, but they still listened to her because she had influence. He talks through 5 different myths. I'm curious to know, if there was a myth that stuck out to you guys. But then he also went into like who's the real leader and like the different things that come into influence. So we talked about character, and he talked about relationships and knowledge and intuition, experience, and how all of those things play a role in our influence and ultimately our leadership. For me, he also said past success is an ability. For me, like the relationship one stuck out because I just with things in my past, like relationships, I like to keep them surface level so I don't get hurt sometimes. And so like actually digging into a deeper relationship with people is a challenge for myself. But it's an area where I can see that I can grow. And I also the other story I really liked in this chapter was his story of Abraham Lincoln and how he was a commander at first in for a battalion for the Black Hawk War, and essentially found himself at private eventually because he didn't know anything and didn't have influence. But he worked on himself, and he held many different positions, and we ultimately know that he became our president. So pretty cool how that example is a great example of how you can grow your influence. And so if you feel like you don't have any right now, like it's not the end of the world. And then the last of the 3 chapters was the law of the process. And basically, the gist of this chapter was just that it's a daily activity to grow our leadership, and it's not a once and done thing. It's not a lottery ticket. It's something that you have to continually work on. And I loved his question in there, and I'd love to hear your guys' answers on this too. But what are you doing to grow to grow your personal development, or what is your plan for personal development? I think is how he said it. So, because without a plan, like it's just a dream, like we talk about how dreams need plans and vision and goals, and deadlines and stuff like that. And so I think that was something that kind of hit too, is like, okay, well, I need to have a plan, and what am I going to do like going forward? Um, and then other things that stuck with me in that chapter was just he talked about like the day-to-day stuff and how your daily agenda will show where your passions are, where your abilities are, and all of those things that like really matter to you. Um, and that plays a role in like our leadership, and I just love how like all of the laws I feel like kind of build on each other a little bit. And so um yeah, essentially we just have to keep going every single day. um oh, and the last thing I want to point out before you guys can chat, or I want to hear your guys's, but I loved his um depiction of like an event versus the process. And the two that really stuck out was like an event challenges people, but the process changes someone. And that also, he says in there that an event encourages decisions, which is great, but a process encourages development. And we all really want to be people that are being developed, right? We never want, I mean, ultimately, I really don't think that anybody really wants to stay stuck in where they're at. So those are some of my big things, but now I'd like to hear what you guys have to say.
Can you guys hear me okay?
You're a little choppy, but it comes through.
Yeah? Okay. Thumbs up. Okay. Okay. I don't have the book in front of me because it didn't come yet, but one of the things I remember was, I forget, some business, they would just fire the person, and he was kind of taken aback by that, how they just fire them and not kind of give them time to show maybe they're a good leader or not. And I guess for me, I was just like, if I was in that situation, would I be getting fired? Like, am I being a good leader? Um, or would I be like, yeah, getting fired? So what can I work on that will make me a better leader? That's, yeah. And I just thought of like our journey in this business, and I'm like, am I planning well? I feel like we make goals and stuff, but sometimes I feel like I don't always make a solid plan for execution. So
Yeah, that was good. Thanks for sharing, Andrea. Very convicting as far as like where your leadership ability lies. You're like, ooh, I'd be getting the axe. Who else?
I think one of the first things that stuck out to me was on page 4, where he was talking about the, let's see, the brothers who had started McDonald's, I think it was. I read this chapter a while ago already, so it's already a little fuzzy. But yeah, anyway, he kind of spells out the steps here for being successful, I guess. Because he says as soon as he this is the guy, I guess, that took over for McDonald's, it sounded like. It says as soon as he visited the store, what was the first thing? He had a vision for its potential. And that is something I still really need to work on. Like, I'm starting to get my own visions. Now I just have to work on maybe solidifying them a little more and being able to communicate vision to others too. So that's one thing. And then it says right just shortly after that, he began to assemble a team. So we're all working on that too. And he recruited and hired the sharpest people. And as his team grew in size and ability, his people developed additional recruits with leadership skill. So yeah, we have to work on teaching our leadership to others along the way. I know that's not something that I ever used to think about. You know, sure, you teach people how to do the steps for the business, but are we teaching leadership? So that's an added aspect to it, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good thought, Leellen. I think that it's yeah, that taking it that next step, like we teach them how to do the things, but then are we developing them beyond that so that I don't know if it's in this book or if it was somewhere else, but they say, you know, like essentially you work yourself out of a job. And it's like, I mean, we're not going to work ourselves out of a job ultimately, you know, but um essentially raising them up to do what we're doing and become a better leader. Yeah. I think Andrea too. Yeah, I think they would probably be kicking themselves because McDonald's is huge now. Although crappy, it's huge.
Yeah, I think it was Fallon said that in her video, Rochelle,
Mm,
about kind of working yourself out of a job.
mhm,
Sort of.
that could be, yeah. Yeah, quality control. What else stood out to you guys? Was there a spot in the like the law of influence? Was there a myth that you guys could relate to? Or even like one of the different pieces of having influence that you guys were like, man, I feel like I struggle with this, or that you're like, I feel like I have this down. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it was in that chapter when he talked about um, a farmer or something. I think he was a farmer. And he realized that guy had a lot of influence. So then he realized what he needed to do was influence him so he could influence other people. And I just thought that's also very applicable of, you know, finding those people that would do this business well and finding a way to influence them in a way that want to influence and do this business and use that influence to build this business too. So it was like kind of encouraging in a way of just to think of, okay, how can I build my influence to influence, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good question to reflect on, is how can we build our influence to influence others too? And have that ripple effect.
Before I started Plexus a few years before, I ended up in a leadership sort of position because, well, I think most of you probably know I work at the hospital, and actually my job there doesn't really have any opportunity for growth or advancement. It just kind of stays the same. But I also had a job at a thrift store because my girls went to the Christian school here, and the Christian school had a thrift store that they were using kind of as a fundraiser for the school. And at one point in time, we had a strong manager at the store, but then she decided to quit, and different people were not, I should say quality people were not applying for the job. And so I was already working there. Myself and another lady decided we could try to job share the manager position. And especially up to that point, I had never really thought of myself as much of a leader at all. But boy, I had to figure out some things. And because that was really my first attempt at it, looking back, I don't think I did the greatest job at leading, especially because, I mean, I always had the desire to lead well and to do a good job and to try to make the place positive and have impact and that sort of thing. But like it talks about on, what is it, page 14, I think. Is that where it was? Yeah. It talks about people assume that all entrepreneurs are leaders, but that's not always the case. Entrepreneurs are skilled at seeing opportunities and going after them, but not all of them are good with people. Many find it necessary to partner with someone skilled at the people part of the equation. And if they can't influence people, they can't lead. And so, let's see. It talks somewhere here too. Oh, just above there, I think. The best way to test whether a person can lead rather than just manage is to ask him to create positive change. Oh boy, if that isn't true. It was something I didn't master there, that's for sure. And I can see that that's something that at the hospital, I am, although I can't advance in my position at the hospital, I have come a long ways in, because of our learning here and through Plexus and stuff, I've come a long ways in changing my attitude there at the hospital, because it tends to be a very negative place to work. And I have pretty much decided that every day I go, I'm going to try to be the positive one. And there's hundreds of people I work with, so I can't affect them all. But even if I can make a positive change in 1 or 2 or 5 people that I'm working with that day, then hopefully over the long run, it'll have an impact.
Absolutely. And I think you will too. I think you'll see that impact. You're definitely in a field where, I mean, you have Gossip Central essentially, because that's what it is. But yeah, good for you, Leon. That's awesome. No, Ashley's trying to get a little kiddo to sleep. Caitlin, do you have anything to add? You have valuable things to share, girl.
So I don't have my book yet, but I tried to listen to some things. And this stuck out to me, and hopefully I'm not crossing these over in my brain because I've been listening to the John Maxwell Leadership podcast and also tried to find some of the stuff to listen to elsewhere. But something that was talked about was like your team that's around you, like having them help you, or like them helping you discover where your different blind spots are. And something that he said that really stuck out was like, okay, what does it show about your leadership or yourself as a leader if you're not willing to like go into that circle of people or the people that you look up to as leaders, you know, and ask them the hard questions like, where are my blind spots, where am I, you know, not doing a good job, you know, and stuff, because that's, you know, why they're called blind spots, because we don't see them and we're not going to see them until somebody else can help point them out in us. So yeah, I don't know if that was within those chapters or not, but yeah.
Yeah, so important to have people point out where we can't see so that we can improve. For sure. Um, Anybody have anything else they want to share? Any thoughts on the law of the process?
Well, I know when I read the chapter about the law of influence, I had to use some of my skills that I've learned because it would be real easy for me to read through that chapter and go straight to the negative of, wow, I don't have much influence with people. Because as it talked about the different things, I just thought, man, I think I would score pretty low in that area because I've always been kind of a quiet person and just, I don't know, someone who isn't noticed easily and things like that. And, but I've also realized over time that instead of going to the negative, I need to recognize it and flip it, like we've often talked about, and not label myself as what I may have seen myself in the past, because I can change, I can grow, I can get better, and I don't have to label myself as a stuck person or a struggling person. I can move forward. So if I'm going to look at the positive, then that's what that chapter does for me. It makes me realize I can grow.
Yeah, we all have the ability to grow. It's just, I mean, a little bit of it goes back to the magic of thinking big with the other people, with the larger group, but in there just talking about growth and like how we have to decide that we can do something. It's all about mindset. So yeah. Yep, Caitlin, for sure.
Did any of you guys have a chance to take that leadership test yet? I mean, I guess you that didn't have the book probably wouldn't have yet, but there's a test at the back of the book. And it takes a little time and thought. So I just wondered if any of you had done that yet.
I haven't yet.
That'll be interesting to see.
I'm sure. All right, gals, it is 9:36. I want to be respectful of your time, so we're going to wrap this up. Next week, we will do chapters 4, 5, and 6. And I'm excited to hear what you guys all have to say. Have a great week, guys.